Hello everyone, my name is Sandu. I'm from Romania, and I'm a philosophical practitioner for sometimes 10 years at least. Just a few introduction about myself in relation with philosophical practice and with this experiential practice that we take in consideration today. I was starting by being a social worker, and I have to counsel the clients. The clients they have different problems, different aspects in their life, and I understand that only psychological counseling is not enough. Many times the problem are not necessarily psychological one, but existential, or about how to reason, how to rationalize about your life, your situation in life, your way of living, and how to investigate your inner life, your external life, and how could correlate it your experience, what you experience is in your outer world, to how to experience your own life in your inner world, because sometimes that could be a problem of understanding your own existential situation. Of course, besides I'm a social worker, trained and certificate social worker, I'm also trained and certification philosopher. So I say, well, wait a minute, there are some practice in philosophy that could be used with clients that have existential problems. So that's how I discover philosophical counseling, philosophical practice. And first of all, I study with Lumen, Oscar Brenife, and other great philosophical practitioners. So I say, that's good. Meanwhile, I have a career in university. I'm from University of Suceava here in Romania. Then I do philosophical practice in my time outside the university, and I try to combine work in university with philosophical practice. That's why I do ethical counseling and ethical audit, and preparation for code of ethics from institution and so on. And last year we do an ethical audit even in our university. I was one of the member of the team that do ethical audit, so I have some experience in working with institutions, but also some experience in working with groups. And the group will be group of students that I do in university, or other private groups of practice, because I'm also a publisher, an editor. I host a publishing house, I host also conferences, and so on. And that's why I have to address to many people. That's why today we will talk about a domain of psychological practice, but that could be also work in philosophical way, in philosophical practice. That's a little bit different, and that's experiential therapy, experiential practice. That originates, of course, in philosophy and come back into philosophy as a philosophical practice in existential and phenomenological approach of philosophy and of psychology, of course. The philosophical perspectives are mentioned. They were operationalized from a psychotherapeutic standpoint, in humanistic psychology. And of course we start from their experience, but we try to understand this in our philosophical way. I never said it's a very different standpoint, but it's have slight difference. Experiential perspective include a series of classical approach of philosophy, such as centered client therapy, Gestalt, psychodrama, and so on. That's psychotherapy, but also include existential analysis and transactional analysis and neuro-linguistical programming. I will come back at this neuro-linguistical programming, starting from Bandler and Grindel, because they have a very powerful philosophical context, and in which they say they have a few principles, such map is not one with the territory, or we cannot to communicate, we can avoid to communicate, and so on. And they have also a practice that is close to some of today's philosophical practice ways, and it's a way of questioning the way of questioning how we understand communication, and how we understand the context of communication, and how we do questioning, and how we do answering. Oscar Brennifer, for instance, doing great works in this direction. And of course Ken Wilber was a very important transpersonal approach of experiential practice. That's also is per se a philosophical practice, because it's transpersonal. He appealed to reality that our beyond our current experience. It's a practice that try to address our inner, or most inner layers of existence that could be approached in as archetypes, as our way to exist, the existence of our inner self. And of course inner self is it's a problem. How to discover yourself? What are you, and why are you here? We are here, and is that something above us? Is there something inside us? Is also something above and inside us that make our existence have meaning? This basically all of this are philosophical question in nature, but requires an experiential answers. So as a philosophical practitioner, we can address these layers in philosophical. So one of this, starting from Oriental experiences, Oriental philosophies, are one that have been told by Ramana Maharishi, a philosopher and a yogi in first part of the 20th century, and his way is to ask, who am I? Who am I besides my body, besides my mind, besides my experience? Of course, in the first moment say, I am a philosopher, I am a professor. But who am I? In my deepest layer. Well, I'm a lover, I'm a husband, I'm a lover of philosophy, because that's what philosophers are, a lover of Sophia, of wisdom. But besides this, who am I? And who am I? And we have many answers. The different answers come when we deeper our understanding about who we really are. And this is connected with original wisdom in Greek philosophy, cannot say auton. That's what Socrates and Plato and Aristotle try to say. We have to know thyself. Who am I? And let's come back in our times these questions. And of course, we have no final answer of who am I, because every one of us are other things. And philosophical and experiential philosophy say start from opinions are current in many New Age approach of psychotherapy and of spiritual practice, of course. Be yourself. Okay, I'm trying to be myself, but who am I? I cannot be myself if I do not know who am I. To be myself, to be what really I am, I must understand this. Who am I? And this is not only a philosophical question, it's a practical one. Because if I know myself as a reaction to the different situation, to different possibility, to different part of my life, I can never understand what are my possibilities, what my reactions are, what could I expect from myself. So existential and experiential practice could represent a therapeutical and philosophical practice based on using some activities such as role play, art therapy, music therapy, guided imagery, and of course rethinking and reshaping our memories by about traumatized experience that have an emotional charge, but also we can put actions on emotions, negative emotion or negative emotions such fury, shame, guilt, pain, that could correlate with past experience, or good experience or good emotion that are close related with success, self-esteem, even responsibility, an ethical concept that could be transferred in our life. We have to let our emotion to be lived by and to be experienced and to be understood, because if I do not remember my emotions, I cannot question myself about it. So we have to do in philosophical practice in this session, we can do a session of remembering ourselves throughout our experience, throughout what we are. And I can start, who am I, by saying what I remember about myself. What I remember about myself in a traumatic situation. And of course, starting from NLP, neuro-linguistical programming, we can detach from ourselves and see ourselves as an image, as a picture on TV, and say, well, this is a character in the cartoon. How this character works, what does character do in his life? Oh, wait a minute, this cartoon is myself. Who am I? Another practice could be to be associated with my previous experience and say, well, this experience is mine. This is part of who am I. So what are the essence, what are the qualities that I perceive in my experiences and my emotions? What do my emotions to my judgment? Are these emotions involved in my judgment process, in my reasoning process? They are interfere with my reason or not? Well, I am only a reasonable person, as I like to perceive myself as being a reasonable philosophical person, or I'm an emotional person that let my emotion to interfere with my reasons, and I choose and I prefer. In the Bible, God is the one who prefers. We have preferences. He's subjective in his own way. He chooses people. He chooses some persons, even collective people, nations. So, of course, we as people have this model of our archetypes that we can consider divine, or we can consider archetypes of the self, but we have these models. So sometimes we let our emotions to interfere with our reason. So that's why we have to understand what frozen experience are, what we understand about what we do not remember and why we do not remember. I remember when I practice such exercises sometimes, and I want to remember a person that I have some negative thoughts about, and my subconscious mind does not allow me even to remember the image of this person, and want to focus on the image of the person for good remembering of what I feel about this person, and to understand, cleaning in psychological way, but understanding in philosophical one, what is my relation with this person, and what does the relation talk about myself, about who am I. So my subconscious does not allow me even to see the image of this person. What does talk about myself, about how I am, not what I am, who I am, but how I am, because these questions gets together. Of course, I have to understand how I am. I'm such kind of person, because that's how I am, not who am I, but of course how I am is influencing very much the self perception, the perception of the self-perception and perception of the self, not very similar, but it's important to understand both of it, because we cannot perceive ourself, our inner self, in a way that we do not perceive how we manifest in the outer world. Our inner sensations, our inner thoughts, our inner perception and so on, we exteriorize them, but I do not know very sure who am I if I'm not understand how I do manifest my inner emotions, my inner problems, my inner thoughts. And experiential practice could be used in trauma therapy, of course, as psychological, because philosophical practice with trauma can be done, but is most appropriate, in my opinion, to first address in psychological way and then to come back to philosophical practice, because emotional trauma has also philosophical background, because we are most of our trauma are coming from related to our anguish, to our anguish about life, about our mortality, about our limited period of time that we live in, and most of us fear of death and fear of express ourselves. This could be emotions that could be also philosophically addressed. And of course there could be two way in which we can approach this practice, experiential practice in philosophical counseling and philosophical practice. First could be taken into by accenting the experience of here and now. What I experience here and now, and how this manifests my inner emotion, my inner self. And in personal development programs, there are many programs that could be adapted to our practice and to our counseling with clients in a way to say, experience, live here and now. If now I'm staying on this chair, what is this experience of sitting? What is this experience for me, and how I perceive you as being here together with me, since you are thousands of miles away from me. But in the same time, I could interact with some circles on the screen, and I could talk to you if I be with you in your presence, but in your virtual presence. So how I experience that? What is this mean? This moment here and now. But here, let's say in this environment, here is not only a space, but is a here in our inner space, in our mind. Because in my mind, I'm with you, and your mind, you're with me. But in topologically, here and we are not together, but we are together in a noetic field of space. So, and now, of course, now I talk to 14 people, but if my recording will be available online for other participants or other people, I will address to many people that are in the same time with me, but not in are in the presence of myself, but in not the same time. The time and the space are not really important. But here and now, yes, is an experience of how I perceive this talking to you, and this being here, and this being with you. This approach could be operationalized by knowing, by taking awareness of our emotions, but of our thinking process. What are the thinking process that come into my mind? How a thought come into my mind? Okay, let's say I think that I am. But if you try for 1 minute to observe your inner emotions, or your inner think, or inner thought, you see, the thought comes and goes, and we cannot be ever sure that one thing is coming and another is coming after, and so on, because we have a process of thinking that comes. Thinking starts from another thinking, or from another memory, or from another emotion, or so on. All of this brought to our consciousness, to our awareness, a thing. And I think, I think about psychotherapy, or I think about counseling, because I talk about. But in the same time, my cat is here, and I thought about my cat, and this interferes in my thinking process. Why? Because it's here. And of course I see in the back part of my mind flowers that I have in my apartment, and the thinking about the flowers interfere with my thinking about experiential counseling. So this is the practice of our thinking process, and that's why that's what I try to address in a particular way in this presentation, starting from a very different point of view than we are used to. It's practiced from an Oriental philosophy standpoint, more exactly from Kashmiri Shivaism, from India. Now Kashmir is part of India and part of another country that are Muslims, but Kashmiri Kashmiri have very important philosophy, and in all the time, in 10th century, they produce an important philosophy called Trika Shivaism, and one of their topics was the process of thinking, the very process of thinking, and that's why we'll address today in this example of guided meditation, starting from this approach. It's Trika Shivaism is a non-dualist tradition which originated in 850 years of our era. This tradition is very influenced in Kashmir, and It was actually a pan-Indian movement called Trika, is correlated with with current Hinduism, but is not the same thing. The greatest sage of this Trika tradition is called Abhinavagupta, and he defined the Trika tradition as one idealistic and monistic. Idealistic, that all reality is in our mind because we are the one who perceive the reality. And also it's non-dualistic, because let's say in our deeper part of our being, Abhinavagupta says, and their philosophy is based on, they say, well, there is no difference between me and all of others that are surround me, even of our, we think there are animated objects, the sun, the moon, or my chair. In the very deep inner part of reality, there's only one consciousness, only one awakening consciousness. This they call Shiva consciousness, but we can say this could be close to Hegel's vision and to other monistic philosophy in Occidental philosophy. They say our cogitans substances and the cogitans substances of the universe could be not one and the same, but of the same nature. Well, for Abhinavagupta, is not only with the same nature with reality, that will be dualistic, but he has is one and the same, and we just appear as a wave on the ocean, on this ocean of consciousness that surround us and is a very inner part of ourselves. That's their monistic and idealistic philosophy. I just mentioned it because it's important for understanding them, not for understanding this practice that I choose for our experiential practice and philosophical, but the context is a little bit important. And and this said idealistic practice they call recognition. We can recognize ourselves by some meaning that could be used in our time, in our practice, not on their philosophical context, but in our own philosophical context. But we have to adapt, of course, these techniques to recognize ourself, our inner self. About I'm talking in the first part of this speech, and we have to understand this. Of course, the other part I say about one that are monistic, and of course, and another part they have split reality in three. They are called Trika. Trika means three in Sanskrit, also in our English language. There are three. They say three, Trika. Everything is coming in three, not in dyadic, as in Western philosophy, but in three. And they have God and Goddess, together with the spirit of individual. That's a metaphysical and religious reality. It's their religions. Just want to stress that could be make an analogy. It's not the same, but it could be analogous with our Christian Trinity, maybe, but it's a philosophical divagation. But we have three energy and three states of the consciousness. We can say we live in the three states of consciousness, in awakening, in dream, and in a deep dream. Also use this in philosophical experiential practice, but it will be time for another discussion in another congress about the state of the consciousness. But we have, of course, a triadic approach of the way we think. The way we think is a thought, a void between thought, and another void, and another thought, and another void. But of course, a triad is thought, void, and thought. We cannot perceive in current state of the consciousness this period of non-thinking that interfere with our thinking process, because it's very, very small. We have no time to perceive it. And they coming from India and from this part, they put a very great accent to this idea of void, of nothingness as no thingness. But they say, for can experience our think, because experience does not stop in this, experience of ourselves does not stop in this so-called void, interval between thoughts. For understand our thoughts, we should perceive one thought and another and another. That's how they analyzed the process of thinking, a process of we have perceiving, and then of course they have more complex system, 12 stages of thought, but we will not go there in this presentation. It's too complex for this 15 minutes presentation, but they have stages of appearance and disappearance of the thought, and this could be used only in meditative practice. A meditative practice that could be used to slow down the thinking process. Slow down in order to observe how our thinking process is approached. And I use to think how can I perceive my own thoughts? How can I be in my own thoughts and outside them and to perceive? Well, this could be approached in experiential philosophical practice. I did it for some times, but it's very interior, very inner perception of me watching me to think, and it's not explicable, but it's a process that could be using for those of you who use mindfulness in practice, in philosophical practice or in other practice of yourself. But today I want to present a text from Vijnana Bhairava Tantra that address these specific topics. And Vijnana Bhairava Tantra is part of other important text in their Trika tradition, Rudrayamala, and it's about 112. Vijnana Bhairava is about 112 ways of doing meditation, doing this awareness of our inner nature. These techniques could be used in Hindu religious tradition, but could be also used in experiential, practical, philosophical, or psychological, but I present this in a philosophical way. And we can say, just a second, I want to read this text from two different translations of the text of Sutra 62 from Vijnana Bhairava. First of all, one translation of the sutra says, when the mind of the practitioner who is just leaving an object is firmly stoned, not going to another object, it stopped between the two objects, and thus, being in an interval place, the realization of pure consciousness, of pure awareness of thyself, in all intensity take place. It's the quotation from Vijnana Bhairava. It's a translation by Jayadeva Singh, Vijnana Bhairava or Divine Consciousness, a treasure of 112 types of practice. And of course other books is Chatterjee Jagadesh Chandra, Kashmiri Shivaism, and I will also present another translation, one does by Christopher Wallace, a contemporary practitioner and translator of Kashmiri Shivaism text. He runs Tantrika Institute from Portugal, and he has a very inspiring series of conferences on Vijnana Bhairava on YouTube, and you can access freely those lectures. Are for those one who are interested in this topic, could be inspiring. The text says, when any mental, emotional state or mood has been released, let awareness be checked. Do not move on to another mood. Then, through the felt senses of one center, a deeper contemplation of one's essence, nature, expand and blossom. So, this it could be an experiential practice. I will not. Initially, I think to have an experience of this, but in a guided meditation, starting from NLP point of view. But I will just present these techniques, not doing practice, because a lecture, not a workshop. But for those who wish to experience, we can organize sometimes such experiential practice if anyone could be ever interested in this. And yes, what's about this? And we think normally, we do not know when the think come and the think go. As they say, in a meditative practice, you can. But meditative practice it was important part of their own tradition in India, and now come important in our Western tradition. And there are many meditative techniques. Very known are, we say, mindfulness. When we inhale and when we exhale, we follow our inhale and exhale process, and we understand our respiratory movements. When we inhale and exhale, we experience our inner process. But also we can doing some self-suggestion practice to slow down our mind, to slow down our emotion. It starts when deep relaxation, and with deep concentration in the same time of relaxation, concentration of our thoughts, concentration to perceive our thoughts. In NLP, neuro-linguistical program, there are some techniques that are closely related to hypnosis. That's not necessarily philosophical practice, but could be used. That's why I not give this presentation in this context, but could be used. Or other ways, and philosophical way, is to focus on how our mind proceed the thing. In this very moment, you can perceive how my words come into your mind. Of course, first is perception. But after perception, you have a thinking process about the meaning of my words, about importance of these words for you. You accept or you decline. It's important or not. It's a right or it's not. You adhere to it or you don't. You will ever use in your practice or not. I'm okay. I'm not. All of this is a thinking process. And for instance, you actually observe this process, and in one moment say stop. And when you say stop, just perceive what are the impression that this thinking process lasts in your mind. What are the impression that stop after this thinking process? Maybe when you do in meditative practice, when you long concentrate on one thing, this is the essence of this kind of meditation, is to observe an object. Observe the TV screen or the computer screen. Just observe. And observe me talking. And for one moment you say, stop. Close your eyes and see what's the impression that remained after those images come from your computer screen or from phone. What is the impressions? What are the results of this process? And in one fraction of the second, but enough to be perceived, this impression stopped you from taking information from outside world and come to your inner world. So outside world are one thing, inner world are one thing, but in this difference of time, you can perceive that they call a void between thoughts period. It's not very easy, but it's doable, and this involves experience and practice. Some people want to have this experience of understanding their own thought-thinking process. Some of them don't. Maybe you will. Maybe you will do not. But this is how this process actually work. As I say, I did not do now a meditation because first of all we have no time, and second is not the object of this Congress, but I just want to present how we can use this Indian philosophical tradition to enlarge our process of thinking about our way of thinking, to understand the very process of thinking in itself. And then of course we can combine with is it a good questions, is it a good reminding, is it our own reminding, those image comes from, those reminding of thoughts comes from what I say, or from or you combine the words that you hear about from me with your previous experience, with your previous practice, with your previous meditation if you did, with your previous emotions. You come at this lecture with good feeling or with not. Thus good feelings are involved in your reception process of what I'm saying. And after a while we analyze our process and say what influence our thinking process and our way to respond to those are in front of us, our counselee or our people that are surrounding us, and how is the way we do our thinking process, and what's how is our response to their thought. And this is the process of internalization of the thought process, and internalization of your of this process. This is what I want to talk about today. If are any questions, if I can manage my speech to give you some information, some thing to thought about, it's okay. If not, I'm sorry. But if you have questions, please answer.
I have some. Dear Antonio, what is the main result of this practice? Main result for participants, for clients? It's understanding deeper yourself, themselves, on maybe a new level of understanding the world. Maybe help with solving some problems. What is the main result of this technique?
main results, I think, is increase awareness of your inner mental process, and this could be used in philosophical counseling, but for people who does not have a sure of their own reality, and this expand the awareness of what are your thinking, what are your thoughts, what really comes from you and what comes from others, and this could be used in philosophical contemplation and philosophical practice when someone is not sure of themselves. First. Second, it's give a clarity of mind. A clarity of mind when you start thinking process. Because if you have an experience in this process, you can understand the parasite thoughts that influence your decision making. What are the parasite thoughts that come in my mind and influence my decision, where those thinking come, when this come, and so on. And most of all, it's a way to better understand than ourselves what you really are, because you can make a very good distinction between what's outside you and what's inside you, and how this outside world and inside world are making together in your thinking process, and how you integrated the world in you're living in. So I think I answer your questions. If not, I come back again. Yeah, someone in the chat says that I give you a lot of food for think. Well, I am a fat man, so food is important for me, and I giving food for any of you. If the food is for mind, I think it's better than food for body, because I cannot give you a cup of tea or coffee because we are online, but a cup of things, why not? Well, if no other questions, I wish to say to all of you, it was a pleasure for me to present this information, these topics. Is one dear to me, and if any one of you would have more information in the future, my email address is Antonio1907, ANTONIO 1907 at yahoo.com.
Maybe you write down this.
Yes, I just write down now. Yes, if anyone wants to ask me questions about this topic or other topics in my works, in my articles. Also, I will give you my site, Antonio /Sandu at .info or antoniosandu.ro. And with this, I finish my presentation. Wish you very great Congress for all participants, and hoping you will enjoy two other presentations that I will do in another Congress of APPA or philosophical practitioner in general, or in other Congress in any other organizational institution. Thank you and goodbye.